Hi, I'm indie fantasy author Melinda Kucsera, and in this episode of Fantasy Lore and More, we have Aaron Hodges, and he's joining me to talk about his epic fantasy novel Darkstrider. So, welcome. Let's hear all about it.
Hey, yeah. As Melinda said, I'm Aaron Hodges, and I'm here to talk to you today about my most recently published book, Darkstrider. It's a bit of a mix of genres. It's an epic fantasy because I love epic fantasy, but it actually mixes a little bit with portal fantasy and a little bit of lit RPG progression fantasy because the main character is a person from Earth who gets he gets brought through a portal to this other world, and he has to kind of figure out what sort of world he's in and where he's going, why he's there, because he's lost all his memories, and he finds that there's magic in this world, and there's a few monsters, and that people from other worlds in this seventh realm are considered to be very bad luck / world-ending phenomenon. So there's also people out to get him just for the simple fact that he exists.
Oh, wow. That's a lot going on. Do you want to go into the excerpt or how we can meet him?
Yeah, so let's meet him as he wakes up in his first chapter. Let's start right from the start of the first chapter. Darkness, absolute black, a never-ending emptiness stretching out to eternity. It should have been terrifying, horrifying, to know he was a part of it, that the infinite had swallowed him up, made him a part of the nothingness that was the universe. But there was no terror in this place, no fear or anger or love. Emotion had no place in the dark, at least not at first. Not until something broke the perfect void, a light, a spark. With it came the fear, an unspoken, unknown terror for what it represented, life. And more than that, an awareness, a consciousness that probed the dark, seeking, searching for something amidst the black, something that did not belong. Him. He felt himself separate from the void, expelled for his own conscious thought, for his fear. Suddenly he was adrift, exposed in the infinite, alone, except he was not alone. Error, system failure, breach imminent. Boom. Mikael Heaton's first sense of awareness was of burning, a fiery heat and sizzling, energy crackling, condensing, as though his own physical self were being dragged from some inexplainable ether and shoved back together piece by piece. It was the most unpleasant awakening he could have possibly imagined. The next thing he noticed was the warm stone beneath him, pressed against his cheek. Not hot enough to burn, but still hot enough to suggest it had been licked by flame. Already it was beginning to cool. Then it was the cold, icy air flowed over him, raising goosebumps across his naked body and leaving him trembling, shivering, cold. He did not like it. Blinking, he struggled to get his bearings, to find the source of the sensation. Instead, piercing, brilliant light pierced his eyes, drilling a pair of agonizing circles deep into his skull, so bright as though he had not used his eyes in a very long time. Instinctively, he crunched them closed again, but that hardly helped with the pounding. He felt as though someone had struck him in the head. His ears were ringing as well, as though he'd been playing Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, several notches of volume too high through his. He paused as the thought met emptiness. There was a gap in his memory. What had that image in his head been? It was already gone, floating away like a child's string of bubbles in the noonday sunlight. His skin crawled as he lay back against the cooling stone. He drew in a breath, and his nose twitched, tingling as he smelt burning ash, and beneath that, something less pleasant, like the stench of a boy's changing room. Confusion claimed Mikael. He drew in a breath through clenched teeth. His stomach churned as though something inside him yearned to escape. He forced it back down. Another breath. His heart slowed a fraction, panic retreating as his mind took hold. He needed to open his eyes to figure out where he was. And what else was he missing? Pull yourself together, Mikael. Light, bright, though it cut less this time. It felt like fists were crashing against his skull, but he could cope, just. With a groan, he commanded his body to move. It took time, as though the connections in his mind had somehow forgotten how this went. His fingers twitched, then an arm. Finally, with a groan, Michael pushed himself to his knees. By now his head was truly pounding, his stomach churning. A thought came to him, along with the image of a hideous green beast. Better out than in. He needed no further encouragement. His stomach convulsed as he hurled acidic bile onto the smooth rock beneath him. He was crouched in a strange indentation in the stone, and a distant part of his mind found himself thinking how it had been formed. The way the rock dipped where he lay, crystal veins twisted into ripples, almost as though it had been heated to melting point and flowed together. Shaking himself, he dismissed the idle thoughts. The strange memory had provided sage advice, and he found himself feeling slightly improved. Physically at least, his mental discomfort only increased as he tried to recall how he had come to be lying in a stone indentation. Was he in a cave? How? There was nothing. It was with rising panic that Michael scanned his memories and found his mind completely, entirely blank. No memory, not a single recollection of a life lived. It was only knowledge. Like, for some reason, he knew the layers of rock in the cave wall had been formed over millions of years of heat and pressure. But he could not remember a single face, not his mother or father, not even the goddamn baristas at his local cafe, which, okay, apparently he had some knowledge. For a while he could remember the words. His mind pulled a blank as to what exactly a barista was. Letting out a long breath, he tried to calm himself. His head hurt, so he must have hit it on something. This was obviously some kind of amnesia, which his ever so helpful mind told him was a disease of the brain. He needed to be methodical about this. There must be some clues about how he had arrived here. Now that his eyes had adjusted, he found that the cave was gloomy, though he could see the distant light of day around a bend in the stone. Michael was just readying himself to look around when he glanced down and was struck by a realization. He was naked. Naked. That was wrong. Just as he knew his name, something instinctual inside him screamed that that was wrong. He needed clothes, though the little voice of intuition didn't offer a reason. Because he was cold? That seemed logical. Whatever reason would there be to cover himself? Certainly his body did not seem anything to be ashamed of. Small, with a beige tint to his skin, which the helpful part of his mind informed meant he probably spent certain time outdoors. His arms were skinny, but his legs seemed to have plenty of spring in them, and the digit between his legs, warmth flushed his cheeks, and he felt a strange sensation of discomfort, embarrassment. So it was about more than just warmth. Strange. Without the context of his own memories, it seemed a somewhat pointless convention. That was obviously not as bizarre as a naked man sitting alone in a cave with no memory of how he had come to be there, who he was, or what manner of world might exist beyond the walls of the stone tomb. Solutions, not problems, Michael. He focused on the first of his problems, clothes. The last of the amnesianess in his body had left him now, but there was still a sense of clumsiness as he began moving about the cave, like his body didn't quite fit with what his mind remembered. Thankfully, the cave didn't appear to hold any immediate danger. His eyes struggled in the gloom, but it was clear that from a cursory glance that someone had been living here until recently, because their belongings remained. Leather-wrapped bedrolls were scattered across the stone floor, and several pieces of clothing had been draped on wooden stakes set in the ground around an empty fire pit. Following instinct, he crossed to the stone circle and tentatively pressed a finger into the ashes. Cold, so they'd been gone for some time, though not long enough for the stench of their unwashed bodies to dissipate. His bare foot nudged a discarded dagger as he stepped away from the pit. He paused to pick it up. The blade was tarnished and speckled with rust, the leather strapping on the hilt crumbling. He let it fall. It would probably break the second he used it as a weapon, and he'd already spied several more promising items: another dagger, several swords, a rusty hatchet. Mikael paused, already halfway across the cavern to the first of the swords. Why had his mind leapt to seeking out a weapon? What manner of man had death on his thoughts upon first waking in a strange cave? An intelligent one. He supposed it was not the worst reflex. Considering the strangeness of the situation, it wouldn't hurt to be armed. Still, clothes first. Those on offer were plentiful, but whoever had been living here obviously had not believed in hygiene. Even the pieces staked out around the dead fire stunk something fierce. Do they not have soap in this place? Still, beggars could not be choosers, so he settled on a pair of black leggings with only one hole in the knee, and a brown button-up shirt he thought had probably been white once. Neither smelt particularly pleasant, but Mikael had tried to keep his mind on other thoughts. He outright refused to even look at the undergarments. He had some standards, apparently. The coarse fabric chafed against his skin as he pulled on each item of clothing, but despite the unpleasantness of the situation, he felt better covered, less vulnerable, and more prepared to face the world outside. He considered the weapons again, settling on the hatchet and the best of the knives. It had no sheath, but after spotting some rope in the corner, he cut a piece from the tangle and looped it around his waist. He was just tucking the knife into his makeshift belt when he spied something that set the hairs on his neck to tingling. Beneath the rope and other discarded belongings in the pile he'd been rummaging through, the floor changed from stone to dirt. Dirt that appeared to have been disturbed recently. He knelt, his mind patiently putting the pieces together as to why he found it interesting. Hidden treasure. The image of a chest overflowing with gold and silver and gemstones sprang into his mind, accompanied with a man wearing a sable fedora hat and holding a whip. Interesting. There was no spade to dig in the earth, so he used a dagger instead. In the end, there was no chest, but he did pull a cloth bag from the dirt that chimed when he tossed it in his hands. It was heavy, too. When he pulled open the drawstrings, he saw the gold coins inside and frowned. That was wrong, and yet a tingle of excitement raised the hairs on his arms. This was money, not like he was used to, but it was something that could be used to purchase things, like better clothes and underwear that had not been worn by another man. Mikael collected a worn-out pack from amongst the discarded belongings and tossed the coin purse inside, followed by a set of spare clothes and a leather skin he thought could be filled with water. He also added whatever scraps of food he found, though that was little more than a few stale biscuits and some type of dried meat. Finally satisfied with his work, Mikael set his hands on his hips and cast a final glance over the cave. All in all, it was a fortunate place for him to have ended up, given his situation. It had supplied everything he might need in an unknown world beyond the stone walls, or so he hoped. He wondered what had become of the original occupants, why they had left. They had certainly lived a rough existence, judging by what remained here. There was a remoteness about this place, a sense of living off scraps, far from the comforts of society. Well, everything but the gold pointed to that, at least. The gold coins did suggest some sort of connection to society. He'd only paused to examine one quickly, but they seemed to be stamped with the face of some lord or king. Given they had been hidden, they were obviously valuable. Why had the occupants not spent their money on better clothing or tools or even weapons? Outlaws. Mikael's hackles stood on end as the answer came to him. That was it, wasn't it? He was standing in the hideout of some sort of kind of criminal outfit. A pressure rose in his chest, a sense of urgency. He needed to leave. Because what if the thieves hadn't abandoned this place? What if they were just out on a raid and were returning even now? He doubted that men prepared to exist off scraps and live in a cave would be particularly charitable to this situation, especially not when they found out he had robbed them. He considered replacing the gold, but no, that was just his panicked mind ticking into overdrive. The ashes of the fire were cold. No one had been here for some time. In all probability, these men had been caught by the authorities and locked away. Though that still left the question around why Mikael was here. Was he one of them? No, that didn't seem right either. Closing his eyes, Mikael focused on the pounding of his heart, the whisper of breath in his lungs, on that chill breeze blowing through the cave. Slowly he calmed and his mind began working again. Nothing had changed. He had his supplies. All he had to do was leave out the front door. The thugs might return at some point, but by then he'll be long gone. A smile came to his lips, and opening his eyes, Mikael made for the exit. Despite his newfound calm, he was eager to be away. The chance of the bandits returning at this moment might be low, but it wouldn't hurt to be gone anyway. No point pressing his luck. Hefting the pack on one shoulder and leaning the hatchet against the other, Mikael wandered out into the warm sunlight. His eyes took a moment to adjust, but when his vision cleared, he found himself at the top of a small rise, leading down to a forest of pine and beech. He could not say how he knew those names, only that the spiky needles and the purple leaves and rich scents on the air matched with what his mind said. Turning, he appraised the mouth of the cave. It emerged from a massive cliff face and was little wider than a crevice. From further down the slope, it would probably appear as no more than a shadow on the granite rock. Its disguise, however, was somewhat ruined by the trail of flattened grass leading up the slope to the opening. The outlaw group hadn't been particularly cautious about concealing their hideout. A grievous error, Mikael thought. Given the location of the cave, sheer cliffs rose behind it and curved away on either side to create a half-circle formation. A good place for a last stand, theoretically. Of course, if you're really being hunted by the law, it would truly be better to pick a camp with an escape route. As it was, if the cops ever found this place, they could have set up in the trees below and starved the bandits out. There was a small stream tumbling down the cliffs nearby, so they would have water, but eventually the outlaws would be forced to either surrender or launch a suicidal charge across the open ground. A frown came to Michael's face as he considered this. Strange that those ideas came so readily, but he could consider his unknown origins at a later date. For now, it was time to leave this place before he froze as a whisper of voices came from the trees. A moment later, a group of shaggy-looking men stepped from the trees below. And that's chapter 1 of Darkstrider.
There we go. Wow, that's a lot that happened.
Yeah, it's a bit of an exploration of what it would be like to wake up in a foreign place, and a little insight into what sort of character Michael is behind the scenes, but that he doesn't know what kind of person he is yet. But it's a bit of a hint of the way that his mind thinks.
So you're looking at it as like the memories make the person. So if that, I don't know, I got that idea in listening to this, that he doesn't know what kind of person he is because he doesn't seem to remember anything. So this is more of like a
yeah,
what is
it's a bit of a
nurture
mix,
versus nature?
Yeah,
Is that right?
I explore a little bit of that. It's a bit of a mix that can't give away too much, but that there are people he meets in this world before he recovers any of his memories that are very different to the type of people he would hang around and interact with in back home, and who he's interacted in the past. And these new connections sort of shape and change him in ways that he might not have changed had he had his memories beforehand.
Are these good ways or bad ways?
Depends on how you look at it.
Okay. So it's open to interpretation. That's interesting. And I also wanted to note that the beginning was very lit RPG. I haven't read a lot of lit RPG. I don't want to say I don't like lit RPG. I think I just don't like it when there's a ton of, game dynamics where you
Yeah.
have, like, the one I listened to, it was an audiobook, and there'd be 5 minutes of this item is now this level, this congratulations, this item is that level. And it just went on, and I just kept skipping every 30 seconds. And it just was never ending. And it was every time they did anything, there were these messages. And I was like, in a game, when you're playing a game, that's cool. But listening to like an audiobook or like reading a book, having message upon message, I was like, dude, just make it a freaking paragraph.
They're super popular in audiobook as well, which is interesting. But this one is, I end up not calling it, or I try not to call it a lit RPG because, well, there's a couple of stats, like
I see,
maybe 10 stats in the entire book where Michael, not long after this, gets a power that he can see a person's power of how strong they are in mana, aura, and body, which are like the 3 stats that people have, but no one else can see those, so they're not exactly an official common thing that's spoken of. And so it's very much more like I've actually written a lit RPG myself that was fully lit RPG, but it was 100% a satire because I'll be honest, I've read a couple ones that I really like Dungeon Crawler Carl is an excellent lit RPG they're just incredibly well written and incredibly well paced and plotted out. But a lot of the other stuff I've read it just has not held my interest, and I've found it was very difficult to tell the story I wanted to tell inside there, that sort of narration sort of thing. But I did really enjoy writing a satire of not just lit RPG, but also epic fantasy and the entire fantasy genre. I think it ended up being.
You got to tell me what the title of that is, because I like reading things that make fun of, and since there's no much to make fun of, like you have to let me. What is the title of that? Let's let the cat in the bag.
it makes fun of absolutely everybody. The main character would be what you would call a hipster from the west coast of the US. So it makes fun of him. It makes fun of the right. It makes fun of fantasy, everyone, romance, everything. The title
wow.
is "How My Wizard Mentor Had a Heart Attack and Now I'm Being Chased by a horde of giant spiders." I think.
That's oh my all right, I gotta look for that. That sounds fun. And as you were talking about it, I was thinking of like Rincewind in whatchamacallit, Color of Magic by Terry Pratchett, and I think it was Magic 4.0. I don't remember the author, but all these are all humorous things poking fun at all the things. There's so much to poke fun at in
Yeah.
fantasy. I write it. I'm allowed to say it. As you.
Every time I hit a trope, I just find a way. How can this go absolutely the wrong way?
That's so fun.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's fun to turn things on their head or side or have things go sideways that normally don't. I don't know.
Yeah. No,
I mean,
I'll write the sequel to it one of these days. But for now, I've just finished the sequel to Voidlight. To Darkstrider, which has been fun. It's got really big this world. I'm learning
fantasy worlds do that. They spread out like the blob. They just sort of like roll over things and encompass more and more things. And you're like, I didn't know that was there.
Yeah.
I should write a book about that.
And for some reason, I had so many characters in the end. It's a sprawling something.
That's what happens.
The title is behind me. The new cover for the book too. The Voidlight. The pre-order's up, but it'll be launching on Kickstarter.
Okay. So
maybe
I'm a science girly.
Weeks.
How do you have a light in a void? Because technically a void is, vacuum. Also makes me think of black holes in which light can't escape. So how do you have a light in a void?
It's actually the nickname that gets given to the nickname, the prophesized name or something that gets given to Michael, not long into Darkstrider. The Darkstrider himself is another character that pops up soon after that first chapter.
What did he do to get that nickname? Now I gotta know.
Well, it comes down to that there is a certain seer, and she kind of calls him out that he's this off-world or this person from another universe. And typically, off-worlders in this world pop up and hang around a bit, and then something goes really bad, and history is recorded multiple genocides and destruction of kingdoms and thousands dead and an entire island archipelago shattered from other off-worlders that have appeared in this universe. So people are Michael doesn't know it yet at the end of that first chapter, but he could be in a lot of trouble if anyone figures out where he comes from. Which, considering he doesn't even know where he comes from yet, it's problematic for him.
So he's coming from a problematic place. That's interesting. You said this blends like science fiction into this. So what is the science? Is that the place where he's from is where we get the science fiction, or is that where he landed that we get the science fiction? Because it seemed like he landed in like a fantasy world.
Yeah, he's certainly in a fantasy world. There's not really a lot of science fiction in it, but there's a little bit of Michael's backstory that is based more. He's like, he didn't come to this world by accident. Let's put it that way.
So there was some science in there.
I would say pseudoscience, being a scientist myself.
Oh, you're a scientist.
Yeah, that's my background. Was a environmental scientist, biologist by trade, and I did it for 2 years before
you did it for a few years.
Retired.
Oh, and what made you leave that, and what did you go to? This is interesting. Usually, science people write science fiction.
Well, I never read one science fiction series that is full on genetic engineering dystopian future, but mostly I write fantasy because that's what I grew up reading and enjoying. And and you know the beats and everything. But
Right.
I worked for a year and a half as an environmental scientist. It was a lot of work in the office, and typically you don't study environmental science to stay in the office 95% of your time. So after a year and a half, 2 years, I went off and did my overseas experience, which is a very typical thing for Kiwis. We quit our jobs and go travel for a couple of years. I did the not so typical thing of starting to write a book while I was away and publishing it and doing very well, and then I just never went back.
So you're a full-time author.
Yeah. I typically publish 3 books a year. This year's only going to be 2, but they're longer.
Well, if you're in KU, that's good because longer books, more pages.
Yeah, nowadays I have my new book's still going to Kindle Unlimited. My older series have all gone wide now because the KU stuff just wasn't working that well anymore.
Yeah, and on wide it's the opposite. Like longer books do not make you more money. Books being shorter do because you can do more in a year.
Yeah,
it's still and it doesn't seem like readers have an opinion so much on length as long as the story. Because I have really long books and I have books that I consider very short.
Yeah,
and they don't. I just get a complaint if I forget to put a favorite character in there. That's the only.
Yeah, and I was reading over some of my older series the other day because I was looking for. I did a Kickstarter on one of them for a box, an omnibus.
I'm doing one too for an omnibus. A lot of fun. Yeah, when so yours ran already, or is it running soon?
This one ran already. For the Gods. One of my best. I think it's one of my best series. But most of those books, there's 3 books that I think the first 2 are in the 80,000, and then the last one is 90,000 words. And I was reading through it just to get some like snippets to do. Like I do a stretch goal where I'll put a bunch of images from Midjourney and stuff in it. So I was looking through for different prompts and stuff, and I was like, man, what happened in this book?
Oh, that's
how is this only 80,000 words?
so that's interesting. So you used Midjourney images. I didn't do any of that. My Kickstarter is going to run October 2nd to the 17th, or maybe it might start next week. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And there's none of that. It's just the books. They have new covers. That's it. They're hardcover for the first time.
Yeah, I got an illustrator for the new cover for it because I love having a beautiful illustrated cover. But then the Midjourney stuff is like just something I would never. They would have to pay like $150 a book to put them on. Yeah. Little interesting images that I just got that it could create for it.
That's cool. Yeah. I never thought of doing that. That's interesting. I just got new covers.
Yeah.
But I did the cover art, so
I do want to do one of these deluxe edition ones at some point, but I'm waiting.
Yeah, I wanted to do the leather and all that, and then I started pricing it out in the print run, and I was like, okay, this is too much math because some of them you need like at least 250 orders, and I was like, I've never run a Kickstarter before. I had no idea if I get 250 orders, and if I don't, like, what am I going to do with the rest of these? So it's like, let's not do that first time.
That's basically my plan. Just get all the omnibus editions out, and then I'll go back to Stormwater. I'll do a full another edit of it, even though I've edited that first. That's my first ever book, like 5 times. I've gone through that book now, but I'll do it again, and I'll get a brand new, beautiful deluxe cover and get that all sorted. But for now, I just want to build up my presence on Kickstarter and get used to the platform. And then
you're going to have to declare if you do any more AI images. They added that to the platform.
Yeah, so that's fine. I already put it in that, like, especially for the stretch goal part, because it's a stretch goal that I always say it's not so. I'm not like, I would never do my cover with it because I like my cover like how this cover is. Oh, I have to go the other way. I love how beautiful the artists get it exactly how I want. But if you want to put 30 images in a book, they cost $100, $200 each. There's just no way I'd be able to do it.
Are those snakes in there, or is like I was trying to?
I'm gonna call it a leviathan.
Okay,
I,
because
I, I
I've
gave
been
her some
staring
creative
at
license
it
on
and I'm
that.
like, are they snakes or?
Gonna call it a leviathan. It gave her some creative license on that one because I hadn't really
Yeah.
defined what the creature looked like.
And is that Michael with the sword facing the
Probably.
Leviathan?
Probably.
We don't know. It's up to the
Yeah.
reader's imagination. Um, so so in this so in Darkstrider, so it's mostly magic and epic fantasy once he wakes up in that world. Or is there any tech or anything? So I thought I saw that you had magic and technology in there.
No,
Maybe I misread something.
this one's a low tech world. Michael could potentially bring some technology to this world because it's hinted at that that could be what's going on with some of the off-worlders in the past, or they come from another world with more powerful magic or things like that. But the world itself is very low tech. There is a budding empire that's been conquering the world, but even
Okay.
that's fairly recent. Until then, it was a lot of scrapping between amongst kingdoms and not a very warlike world. They have these people called pathfinders, and they basically, if
Mhm.
someone is recognized by the universe as having done something of importance or something significant, then they manifest an essence that they absorb, and then gives them their magical powers, and that sort of sets them on a path, kind of a progression path. You have ranks, and they move up the ranks as they go through personal revelations, and but they also have to train, and they can that then gives them the power. They get certain abilities depending on what sort of person they are, and each rank they go up from copper, iron, steel, bronze. They get a different. They each rank up, they get a new ability. Some people focus more on their own body, so they get abilities that let them move faster or hit harder, or just makes their body stronger.
Mhm.
Others use their own soul, their aura, and that focus, concentrating on that past, lets them see more of the world. They can see other people's auras, perhaps, or they can manipulate their own aura to heal others or attack others with their aura. And then the last type of ability is mana, which is just magic from the world. Basically, they draw magic from the world and use it to then manipulate the world. So it's similar to aura, but aura comes from within and mana comes from without, and that's the three abilities that Pathfinders can manipulate. Some like a balance amongst them, and others are focused on one path. It's not a very, it's fairly, like, especially the weaker Pathfinders, copper, iron, steel, they're stronger than the average human, but they're certainly not immortal, and they can
Mhm.
be struck down in battle. If there's 5 people around them, they might not be able to beat 5 people 1-on-1, 5-on-1 kind of
Yeah.
thing.
That might be hard for anyone. So
Yeah.
it sounds like this is more like a hard magic sort of a system.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of rules and how it works and limits to you can only draw so much mana, and as you get stronger, then you can draw more. But a weaker Pathfinder might only be able to use mana to throw one fireball or two fireballs in a day, and another one, and someone much stronger could go for an hour or so drawing mana from through their body.
That's cool. And that is, I love those hard magic systems. I like there being rules and consequences, and I don't know. I like that for some reason.
Yeah, no.
I think because that's more like our world. Like every action in our world has a reaction.
Yeah, and I think Brandon Sanderson has really popularized that sort of magic system with all his work being so popular now.
Yeah, I mean, I've only read his superhero trilogy. I've not read The Way of Kings or
It's
some of
actually
his
one of my
other works.
favorites of his. Actually, that
Yes,
series I think was one of my favorites.
I mean it's on the list. Um, I just haven't gotten to it yet. I Yeah, it's on the list. it's just it doesn't scream like my favorite kinds of tropes and things. So like it's on the list, but other things keep rising above it.
It's it's pretty slow to start with. Like I got into Sanderson right before the pandemic, and I'll be honest, I was reading Way of Kings, and I was not getting into it
Yeah.
until I got locked in my house for like 3 months, and then I read all of his books in like 3 months.
I see. Yeah, there's certain stories that I like, and like I just like that's why I read his superhero trilogy. Like it had the blurbs at least mention like some things that I really enjoy reading. So I got that and like devoured it. I didn't like the third one. It didn't it I don't know.
Yeah,
I've talked about it in other
it
ones.
was for
Like
a
the third
bit.
one of the Reckoners is like it's a letdown. Um I think that also colors my opinion, like why I keep moving it down. Like I don't know. But I also like there's certain tropes that I really like, um, they're not present in the blurb, and so I'm like I'm always looking for more books that have that trope, so I just keep shifting it down. But eventually I'll get to it. Unless they keep putting out more books with my favorite tropes in them, and then I don't know. Maybe I might not get to it. I don't know.
Yeah, fair.
I don't want to promise and then just not get to it.
Well, my hope is with the whole writers' strike in Hollywood that everyone's going to come reading our books again soon, when Netflix and everything runs out of stuff to show.
I mean, I hope so. Although, like with the WGA strike, there would be no screenwriter to turn your book into something that they could use, unless like
Yeah.
a strike breaker, I think call them scabs, were to do
No,
it, and then that would kind of get you blacklisted.
no one's come looking for my script for a video yet. So,
And I could be wrong about this. Like I'm just going by like I know some people who are part of the union. And I live in New York, so I know people who are part of the union. I'm not actually because I'm indie fantasy author, but I don't think we can join that. I'm not sure
oh
though.
no,
But
I was meaning just more like people at the Netflix and all that are going to run
right.
out of their shows, so then they're going to turn back to books and come read our stuff.
I mean, they seem to want to retread things that are already done. I mean, how many Transformer movies have there been? No shade to fans of that.
I saw there was a Beast Wars Transformer. I was like, man, I used to like Beast Wars. I didn't think
Yeah, I was like, I remember like vaguely there being toys for that when I was a kid.
Yeah,
I was
it's
like,
crazy.
I can't see the movie. This is just creepy. Having strange childhood memories of the commercials.
Yeah,
um, but I mean, it'd be cool if like they did come looking for fantasy books to make into things. Like that would be very awesome. I think that would be amazing. Like I hope they do. I don't I think you have to have a really big fandom. I mean, Brandon
yeah.
Sanderson, they're not coming and knocking on his door making movies out of it. So I think he'd be first in line.
Actually, Brandon Sander's making Mistborn supposedly.
Oh, he is? I haven't read
Yeah,
that either.
yeah.
Don't revoke my
Supposedly,
fantasy card.
he's supposedly he's working on something with somebody to make a movie from Mistborn. Yeah,
That's
it
interesting.
would probably be a pretty good one to adapt into a movie because it's a heist fantasy, and heists do generally translate pretty well into Hollywood
I just wrote one of those.
scripts.
They're kind of fun.
Yeah, I think I've got to watch a whole lot of heist movies, and then I'm going to try and write a hero's journey heist fantasy start. We'll see how it goes.
I did an anti-hero. Well, not really. I don't know if he might become an anti-hero. He's more like a morally gray like character. Yeah.
I think the anti-hero is going to be the mentor, and then the main character is still going to be the I can help the world until they all go.
Oh, he doesn't want to help the world. He was let's say that somebody convinced him that if you went in and stole this thing, he'd be able to get revenge on somebody powerful that he really wants to get revenge on. But because that somebody convinced him to do this, it was never really his goal to start with. So, and he's got some flexible ideas about revenge and what he might want to do next. So let's just say the person who convinced him to do this, like, might regret their decision. You might not want to give up this powerful artifact.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's a wild story. Very wild. I'm not sure when it'll be out anywhere, so we'll just keep that. We'll just keep that quiet for now. I'm not sure when that'll be anywhere that anybody can
That's
read that.
always the way authors more ideas than you can write.
Yeah, no, I mean it's written. The whole first book is done. I don't know. I might want to write the whole trilogy and then put it out. It's very episodic. More than
Gotcha,
usual for me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So more like a vellum kind of thing, possibly. Not vellum.
I mean it is on it is on Kindle Vella right now, but
Vellum. There we go.
yeah. Yeah, I'm still trying to decide what to do with it. I mean it'll eventually be out everywhere, but I'm like because it's so it ends on a cliffhanger. There was no other way to end it. The characters left me no choice. But it's a bigger cliffhanger than usual. So I'm like feel like I at least want to have this second one almost done when I put out the first one. So I can be like, oh, this will be out X. Maybe I've never done a rapid release, but maybe try. I don't know. I have a feeling the second book is going to leave me no choice but to end it on a cliff. Also, I don't. These characters are not nice to me. I don't think they're gonna let me end it any other way. Unfortunately, I don't like cliffhangers. It really bothers me that they're making me do this.
I once ended a 4-book series on a cliffhanger that I still haven't wrote the sequel series.
Oh, how long ago was that?
It was at least 2 years ago that I finished that series.
Oh, is that in the queue for 2024?
It was, and then that book morphed into the heist series.
Oh.
And I was like, this is not that same world. No, it's really not. There's something else I want to do with it.
Oh wow.
Maybe it'll make it. Maybe it'll make it.
Oh wow. It's you gotta go with the muse or with the characters if you don't have a muse.
Yeah, for sure. Something a little bit different. So it'll be nice to. It's either that or the comedy, isn't it? Or I'll do the comedy, the satire sequel next. But it's always hard to choose.
You got it seems like you've got quite a few options. So getting back to Darkstrider, so in the blurbers it was talking about that there's like a mysterious force or or the magic itself is like hostile to him or is trying to make him do things. Or did I get the wrong impression?
Let me have a look. It's been a while since I've read.
And maybe I got the. It's.
It's talking more about how the world is hostile to him. So that the very concept of him being an off-worlder,
I see.
or someone from another universe is basically makes him like the boogeyman or the cursed person that no one wants around them, and that really they probably should kill because he might end or destroy their entire civilization or something, according to their own history and legend.
Oh wow! So it's him against his world. So is there like is who's the villain in this, or is there no villain? Is it just him against the situation?
Yeah. So it's this first part at least is a bit about him trying to find his place in this world and figure out why he's there, how he can stay alive, because there's a lot of people gunning for him. He does meet one character early on that, while he has his doubts about Michael, that he also sees Michael do good and stand up for people that couldn't stand up for themselves. So he decides to take a chance on this person that could be the end of his society, but he doesn't want to kill a man that could be good in cold blood for no reason because of what he might do. So, But there's plenty of other people looking for the kings and emperors that feel that are threatened by him because of the knowledge and power, and well, they're not really sure what he possesses, but they know that off-worlders are dangerous, and if they don't deal with him, he could end up turning against them and destroying their empire or their kingdom at the end of the day.
So this is a fantasy survival story. It sounds kind of dark in tone.
Yeah, it's certainly got the first part's not too dark. My stuff,
but it gets darker.
Yeah, it gets darker. It gets more grim. The second book certainly gets more grim as they're trying to find a way through, and a lot of negotiation and backstabbing and back market deals and whatnot going on.
So this is like
crosses.
Right. So this is like more dark fantasy, grim. Was it grim noir? No, that's not.
Maybe not that dark, but
grim dark. That's it. Grim dark.
Yeah, maybe more along those tones.
I was getting more like, I don't know if you read The Black Company by what's his name? Glenn something. But I was getting that kind of like it's like about that kind of level of darkness, with some humor.
Yeah, it's very much like it's a lot of it's about, difficult to describe, really. No, it is a fairly dark book. There are people die and people lose people, and it's a little bit about, especially the second book, about whether war is the right choice and whether there's even a choice at times to go to war, or whether it's better to make peace even if you have to sacrifice bits of your freedom and whatnot, because war is hell.
That's what's giving The Black Company. It's by Glenn Cook. I just Googled it because I was like, I can't remember this, and I loved the series.
Haven't read it. Glenn Cook. I've heard of it. Black Company.
Yeah, it just
familiar.
When you were reading the excerpt and what you've been talking about, I'm like, this is giving Black Company vibes. It's not, Black Company's not lit RPG or anything, but it's giving that, like, that it would be at home, sort of, if they were hanging out on a shelf next to each other, that would, there's some similarity of tone and survival. Like, I think their first book at The Black Company, they're stuck behind enemy lines fighting a unwinnable war. I haven't read it in a long time. I need to reread. I got to pull that out.
Yeah, it's a fun. I might have to give that book a look up.
Yeah, you might want to. I mean, it's not the same scenario as yours, but like from what I've been hearing, like, and certainly from the excerpt, like, I was definitely getting the vibe, and it was also reminding me a little bit about the Malazan Book of the Fallen, more Deadhouse Gates than the Gardens of the Moon. I was getting some vibes like that. Those are also not lit RPG or anything, but just similar tone and like storytelling style.
Yeah, that's definitely why I moved away from the lit RPG kind of branding for it, because it's certainly not your typical lit RPG. It's more portal fantasy because he does get sucked through a portal, but
right. But then after that, he's just in the fantasy world. So the portal is just kind of like his entry into the world.
Yeah, exactly. And then much more epic fantasy, a little bit of politics, a little bit of military fantasy, because he unwittingly brings some military strategy into the world.
And that's what was giving The Black Company and the Malazan Book of the Fallen, because it's epic fantasy, and there is that military thing, and that's why I like them.
Yeah.
It's something I like very much. I think I was in the military in a former life. Cannot get enough of that in any genre.
Fair enough. I like having a bit of military, bit of strategy, and bit of different tactics and things, different ways of training. I don't have much of a background in that myself, but I've read a lot of historical fiction like Simon Scarrow and stuff, the Roman legions that I enjoyed, and David Gimmel's always got a bit of warfare and he loves his sieges, David Gimmel.
I'm trying to think. I think I've read one of his.
Legend, maybe. Just the Legend.
It's sounding very familiar. It's like I've read a bunch of military history books, especially about the Romans, because I mean, hey, they were very warlike for very long. There's a lot to write about. There's a lot of battles there.
Yeah.
But
Simon Scarrow loves his Romans, and then David Gemmell is more like Scottish, English influence with his stories with the Scots and the battles of England and stuff over the years.
I didn't read that. One of my favorites was the hoplites versus the Roman legions. That was really fascinating. Just looking at from the two, so the Greeks were the hoplites, and obviously the legions were the Romans, and they're looking at their different clashes. You know, who won, why, and it was just fascinating. I don't remember the title of the book. It was just a really fascinating book. Very military history. I don't know if anybody else would enjoy that except military history folks and those of us who aspire to write military fantasy.
Yeah, Gimmo was much more. He was a historian, and it is really, really, really heroic fantasy. There's just a lot of military stuff mixed in because he's very much magical realism kind of world where magic is not normal, and when it appears, it's like everyone is very, very worried about it.
I see.
But mostly it's about heroes, people that are almost inhuman in their courage and strength and everything, but they're really just people and fantastic warriors and whatnot.
Well, we need heroes. I mean, we need people to look up to model our behavior on, especially in times of strife or difficult situations. Being able to look for these outsized heroes, we need that, and I think that's why fantasy books are so awesome, because they're also giving us different heroes that we don't see in history or that didn't get recorded by history, because history is recorded by the victors, as we all know, and so you can see yourself in it, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, I love heroic fantasy. It's always amazing to read those sort of stories about the fighting against the odds and all that.
Yeah. And we can reflect different parts of our world in that and work out ways of fixing those parts or breaking them further, depending on if you're writing noble, bright, or grimdark. You can take it in either direction, which I think is so cool.
Yeah.
So you said earlier that so you just finished the second book, the sequel to Darkstrider, which is Voidlight, and so when is that coming out?
So I've just finished the second draft of it. I've sent it off to the editor for her to take a look at. Hopefully she'll be back in like a couple of weeks, and from there I'll do the third draft, which doesn't usually take me too long. It's a couple of motivational changes for characters I need to make to get their story sorted and expand on a couple of other point of views that are sort of minor characters stuff going on in the background, but will be important in book 3. So I think I'll probably be launching the Kickstarter for the project, hopefully in about a month, and that'll be run for 3 weeks. And then after that, the books will go out in November, and we'll aim for like a start of December launch for the book itself on Amazon to the everybody.
Okay, so that's cool. That's a cool way of doing it. I never thought of like launching a book with Kickstarter. It's just gonna do omnibus.
Darkstrider was the first book I launched individually with Kickstarter. I've done it like 3 Kickstarters now that are omnibuses, but as a way of like getting it out there to my super fans that want to get the special edition hardcover copy with all the images and everything, and all the unlocked stretch goals and things. It's kind of cool what you can create with it. So
Yeah.
I've quite enjoyed doing that.
No, that's cool. My mind is a little bit blown now. It's like, maybe I'll do that for my heist book.
Yeah, no, it's a fun way of doing it. And then you can also add, like, every time I do a new Kickstarter, I keep the files and like, those special hardcovers you can and ebooks you can only get through my Kickstarters. And each new one brings on new people that want to grab the old ones as well. So got a bit of a backlist going on there that you can add on and everything as well.
No, that's pretty cool. I didn't think of that either. Might have to edit my thankfully it's not running yet. Add some of these things in. That's a great idea.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And the stretch goals as well, like the images and things. People love the mid-journey stuff, the little bits and pieces popping in there.
That's cool. I hadn't thought of that either. I'll have to look into that. Yeah, that's cool. So all right. So after book 2, is this going to be a trilogy? Or is this like an open-ended series? Because you said it's sort of expanding the world and more characters. What are you
at this
planning for the
stage? It's planned for a trilogy at this stage. There's certainly space for it to grow from there if it has some more success. And but for now, I've planned the self-contained trilogy, and the third book will be the resolution of that, and we'll see where it goes from there. It's definitely on my writing list for next year, probably after I've taken a break to write this heist hero's journey thing that I'll be writing next.
Yeah. Okay. So the 2024 editorial calendar, what does that look like? So you're going to be working on this heist thing. What other books will you be writing in 2024?
Well, if we're going with the what do you call it? The goal, the mile high goal of 2024 will be to write the third book of this series, the heist kind of hero's journey that doesn't have a title yet, and also probably the sequel to Help. My wizard mentor had a heart attack and now I'm being chased by a giant horde of giant spiders. The sequel to the satire. So those would be the 3 books that I've got on my calendar to write next.
Will there be Kickstarters for each one?
Yes, most likely. Maybe not the heist because I'll try and launch it big on Amazon, but maybe there will be. Yeah, probably will be Kickstarters. And there'll be a couple of Kickstarters in between for my other series that are still yet to have their own omnibus edition.
Oh, okay. Nope, that's very cool. That sounds like a busy year in 2024.
Never stops.
No, it doesn't. It never does. So now you'll have to come back next year and we'll have to find out how well you did on these goals. Which books did you actually write? What Kickstarters actually happened?
What is the revised 100,000-word books?
Yeah, and what is the revised calendar of books for 2024?
Yeah.
Because there's always what we plan to write, then there's what we actually write.
No, for sure.
They don't end up being the same thing.
Sometimes we just get completely distracted.
Those plot bunnies, man, they hop on by, and sometimes we have no choice but to chase after them.
Exactly.
Because they are just such an interesting idea. And then we end up writing the trilogy we hadn't planned on.
Yep.
Just my problem, and why I don't know when the book is exactly coming out. It wasn't supposed to exist. Now it does. Yeah. Funny how that happens.
It's fun though. Get to come up with new stories. It's always.
It is, and get to know new characters, new places, new timelines.
Exactly.
Sometimes all 3. Is there anything else you want to see about Darkstrider, about any of the other things that we've been talking about?
No, I think that's about it. You can find them on Amazon. They're all set. Aaron Hodges Darkstrider and Voidlight are the 2 books we talked about, and the one about spiders and the wizard as well. But you'll find it on my Amazon page if you're looking.
And we'll have the links in the description or the show notes, depending on where you're listening or watching. And since you did such a lovely job of wrapping things, all I can say is thank you for joining me for another episode of Fantasy Lore and More. I'm Melinda Kucsera, and we've been talking with Aaron Hodges about Darkstrider, Voidlight, and what was help my wizard had a heart attack and now I'm chased by giant spiders. Did I get it right?
Pretty close.
Which has been, and Aaron's going to come back and let us know in the future how well he did on his goals. What else we can expect. Thank you. Have a great day or a great night wherever you are.